LAMIN Bey and his family were forced to flee their home in April when fighting on the outskirts of Tripoli started. They, along with more than 30 other families, are sheltering at this old school.
They say there's a ceasefire, but that's not true. There's still heavy artillery, and at any time, one side could hit the other.
The school where the children used to go is also near the front line and was forced to close. LAMIN is worried about the disruption this conflict is causing to his boys' education.
Of course it affects them. They are not used to their surroundings, and the students at school they are moved to. They are surrounded by stories of violence and war.
Many other schools like this one have had to close in order to provide shelter to people who have fled the fighting.
They talk to me about war, they talk to me about Kalashnikovs, they talk to me about rockets. This is the culture of our 9 and 10-year-olds.
The UN-backed government here in Tripoli says schools in safer areas that are still open are becoming increasingly overcrowded because of the number of children who, along with their families, have fled the conflict zone. The UN says at least 200 schools have been forced to close since renegade General Khalifa Haftar started his offensive on Tripoli more than 10 months ago. Computers destroyed or abandoned, playgrounds deserted. This is one of a number of schools that have been hit during the fighting in southern Tripoli. A warehouse that used to store books to be distributed to schools across the capital was also destroyed.
This war has affected the education sector very much. Teachers and students have had to move. Many schools we can't even visit because they are in areas where there are clashes.
More children are expected at the shelter, their education and development put on hold. Libya is a country, says the UN, where around 500,000 children have been affected in some way by the civil war. Stratford, Al Jazeera, Tripoli.